So asymptotes are something that we've never really talked about or that you haven't learned up until now, right? You've learned what a function is. You definitely did domain and range last year. Um, Volume, all the things that we've been working on, but asymptotes are kind of like this new concept that's kind of difficult to understand, but hopefully with some practice and maybe watching this video a couple times, you'll get the hang of it. Um, and so we're just going to talk about what an asymptote is. So I want you to think of it as a boundary, right? It's a line that the graph of a function approaches, but it never touches. Like it will never cross it. So when I look at this function to my right of this first bubble, I have this dotted line, and that dotted line is labeled y equals x because that's the line, right? That's just the equation of the line that it is. But that dotted line isn't the function that we're looking at. We're looking at the function that's in the first quadrant and in the third quadrant, right? But we have this dotted line, and that's our asymptote. That's our boundary line. And I'll highlight that in blue so you can see it. And so you'll look at this function and you'll see that we get really, really close to touching it, the asymptote right here and right here. But what's really cool is that we're not actually touching it. We get really, really close to the point where we're like decimals away from it, but we'll never actually equal the exact number, right? So it looks like this function is touching this dotted line, but it's actually not touching it. It's just getting really, really close and then just kind of settling right alongside it for eternity, right? The arrows mean for forever. And so we have two different types of horizontal asymptotes that are really important to us. And so we have horizontal asymptotes and vertical asymptotes. And so you can kind of guess that like a horizontal asymptote would be a horizontal line and that a vertical asymptote would be a vertical line. Okay, and then we can have other forms of asymptotes. For example, the first one I show you up here in the bubble isn't a vertical or a horizontal line. It's just a line, and that's okay. But it's really important to know what a horizontal asymptote and what a vertical asymptote are. So if we look at the graph to the right, we can see that even though it crosses this line a bunch of times, as it flattens out, it runs right alongside it. So even though this is kind of like sinusoidally, how do I want to phrase this? Even though it's kind of bouncing up and down over that line, it really flattens out right here. And so it flattens out at this horizontal asymptote of y equals 5. So that's saying that the y value of that oscillating function will kind of plateau at 5 because there's an asymptote at y equals 5. And so whenever we talk about horizontal asymptotes, just like when we talk about horizontal lines, we write them as y equals a number, right? So we do the same thing with a horizontal asymptote, right? So you can see right here, it says y equals 5. So when we're talking about a horizontal asymptote, we write it as y equals, and then I'm just gonna fill that in with a number, because I think that's important. And then you can see in the next graph where we're talking about vertical asymptotes, we also have a horizontal asymptote, right? But this time it's not at y equals 5, it's at y equals 3. So that's saying that this line, or this part of the function right here, that kind of flattens out with the arrow, will get really, really close to the y value 3, but we'll never hit it. So for example, if you plug in a number, you could get 2.999999 out, but you're never going to get 3.0 out. You will never get 3 out. You could get 3.00001, but that's still not the same as just 3. So in addition to having a horizontal asymptote in this graph, we have a vertical asymptote. And so that's just this vertical line right here labeled x equals 2. And so when we talk about um, vertical asymptotes, we kind of have the same idea. So this arrow right here is getting really, really close to x equals 2, but never touching it. So I could plug in x equals 2.00001 and get an answer out. And I could plug in x equals 1.99999 and get an answer out, but I could never just plug in 2. I will not get an answer out because at 2, there's no point that exists there because the graph is going up towards positive infinity and down towards negative infinity, right? So it's not meeting at a point. They're going in opposite directions. So when we talk about vertical asymptotes, we write them as x equals because that's how we write a vertical line, right? So when we have x equals a number, that really tells us there's a vertical line. And I know this is really confusing at first. I totally get that. And I know this is something that we've never really talked about and you've never seen before, so it's just really new. But by watching this video and then practicing on IXL, that's really going to help you look at graphs and determine, okay, where is there a horizontal asymptote? Where is there a vertical asymptote? And then once you are able to do that, you'll really understand what an asymptote is saying. And we'll do practice in class as well.